Hey, Gerald. Thanks for joining us on the show. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, we're great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
awesome.
So you are a senior software engineer at the .NET MAUI team at Microsoft. What's it like being part of that team?
At the moment, it's chaos. Um, no, so it's really cool to be a developer on any team at Microsoft. So
Yeah.
to give a little bit of context, I started a little bit over 2 years ago. So that was pre-COVID. I got to travel a little bit as a software engineer on the Xamarin Forms team, because I will explain that all. Xamarin Forms is, of course, the predecessor of .NET MAUI.
Mhm.
Then I made a little shift to GitHub Codespaces, which is also very interesting technology. So I got to spend a year on that, building that, which is a really cool solution as well, but something completely different from .NET MAUI. And now, they had an opening back in the .NET MAUI team, and I come from the community. I've worked with Xamarin Forms and all the mobile apps, so that's really kind of where my passion is. And
Yeah,
they had an opening; they wanted me back, so I'm back. But
cool.
a lot is happening there. It's a new product. It is also already a little bit delayed. We'll talk about that, I guess, a little bit as well. So yeah, it's kind of chaos, but fun.
Nice. Cool. So yeah, we want to learn all about Maui, obviously. So I would say dive in and show us the money.
All right, all right. So let me just share my screen a little bit. That helps with the talking. There we go. Eh, Move you out of the way. And so let's start with the thing that I actually talked about. Maybe let's start a little bit before that. So as I mentioned, Xamarin Forms is the predecessor of .NET MAUI. You probably have heard the name at least by now.
Mhm.
And Xamarin Forms is like the UI framework that allows you to write cross-platform apps with C# and .NET and all that kind of thing. So Xamarin is now referred to as Xamarin Traditional, which basically are the wrappers for the libraries to Objective-C and Java and Swift and that kind of stuff that all translated to the native bits on iOS and Android. And Xamarin Forms is a layer on top of that that is an abstraction for all the UI things, basically. So Xamarin Traditional allows you to write apps in C#. That's what that does, but you will still have to work with a lot of the namespaces that look a lot like iOS namespaces and Android namespaces. And Xamarin Forms also kind of abstracts that away and allows you to define all kinds of controls in XAML, and you define that abstract button, and that will translate into the button how it's supposed to look like on iOS or Android. And there's other platforms, UWP, Tizen on TVs, and then Samsung things. I mean, name a platform and it's basically supported. Now that has existed for a long, long time. I think at this point, 6 or 7 years. But we've tried to keep it backwards compatible for a long time, basically forever. And we gathered a lot of learnings from that. But we needed to stay backwards compatible, so there wasn't a lot of wiggle room to make breaking changes and that kind of stuff. So now with .NET MAUI, that's kind of the evolution of Xamarin Forms. If you go back to that date, Xamarin was a separate company that was bought, that was acquired by Microsoft as well. So the name is still there, and that's, we need to change that because it's now really part of the .NET ecosystem instead of something separate. So it's moving together with like the name change with .NET MAUI. It's moving into .NET 6 as a first-class citizen, but also together with that, we change the name and we have the possibility to make some breaking changes. So it will be mostly on the inside. There will change a lot with the architecture under the hood, but the outside APIs stay pretty much the same. So that's kind of like the first goal that we have, to make that transition as easy as possible. You should be able to transition your Xamarin Forms application very easily to .NET MAUI. But under the hood, a lot has changed for the better. So this all was planned. All of this goodness was planned to ship together with .NET 6, which is going to release in November, which is going to launch at .NET Conf, which is a event from Microsoft, which is going to happen yearly, where probably now every year the new .NET version is going to be released because we are on a yearly release cycle right now. But .NET MAUI needs a little bit more time. I think we got all the basic bits implemented, but it needs some polishing. It needs some a little bit more shine. So that's where this blog post comes in. I assume that we can put some links in the video description or something, so I'll provide you with that. This was announced in September 14th. That all the new bits of .NET MAUI, it describes here everything that it is today. I will do that a little bit for you more as we go over this. So this talks a little bit about the previews together with Visual Studio 2022, but it also talks about get started today. Well, it talks here somewhere about a little delay, and we're going to ship this in Q2, so the second quarter of 2022. I think it's, here we go.
Oh yeah.
We're targeting now early Q2 of 2022.
Yeah.
So because like I said, we have like all the stuff is basically in there, all the elements are there, but there's still some quirks here and there, some stuff that's not really working great. So we need some more time to actually, polish it, make it right. And it was a tough decision, but we'd rather give you something that we are convinced that should work correctly, that you can actually work with, that you're confident that you can build your apps with and go out into the market, than give you something that is half done and you're going to be mad at us. Why are you giving this to us? And et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of the story where we're at right now.
Cool. And MAUI is the final naming, right? Because usually if a team comes up with a cool name, it gets renamed just before release to something boring, but
no. So this is kind of like I've seen other options. This was a good one. I think there's a lot of, there's always different opinions about something, right? But it stands for .NET Multi-Platform App UI. And then the multi-platform, we are not taking the P because then it would be .NET MAUI, which would be a bit weird. So now we have .NET MAUI, and you can say a lot of things about it, but this is what we're sticking with. This is going to be it. It's also like we have the branding. It's in our namespace. This is the namespace that we. Oh, I don't think you can see this. I'm pointing at my chest here. When we get back to the camera, you will see that I'm using Microsoft.MAUI on my shirt right here. But so that's the namespace, that's the name that we are sticking with, and that's going to be it. And of course, together with that, we get to make all kinds of puns on going to Maui and Hawaii and all the palm trees and sun and whatnot that comes together with that.
Yeah, that feels great.
So what would be for you some of the biggest differences comparing .NET MAUI to previous versions of Xamarin Forms?
So if you remember, if you've ever built a Xamarin Forms application, maybe I got it right here. I got a couple of instances of Visual Studio 2022, so that is in preview right now as well. And actually what I didn't prepare is a Xamarin Forms application. So let me see if I can just create that and improvise here a little bit, which is always dangerous, but let's just have a little play with it.
Well, you're already running beta software, so a little improvisation can't hurt, right?
Yeah. So here you can already see that I've got the .NET MAUI templates. There's also a Blazor template, more on that later. So if you install Visual Studio 2022, the .NET MAUI templates are already in here. Of course, that is whenever you install the .NET MAUI workload. So if I scroll back to this, you can see here this screenshot. And here it's a little bit tiny, but you have these different workloads now that you can also now check the mobile development with .NET. I think the Xamarin logo is going to disappear here. But then on the right here, you can see optional IntelliCode, Xamarin, and .NET MAUI. So you can now choose to install these three options. Of course, that is good to name because Xamarin Forms is of course coming to an end at some point, which was targeted to be November 2022, a year after .NET MAUI would be released. Now, of course, that .NET MAUI is pushed back a little bit. The end of life, so the support date for Xamarin Forms is also pushed back. So the day that .NET MAUI will go GA will be the day that the counter starts, and then I think a year after that, the support for Xamarin Forms also stops. But that gives you a lot of time to do the transition, which shouldn't be too hard. So. Just to make that really clear that we're not leaving you empty-handed right now. You still have ways to build apps today and until all the things are stabilized.
And Gerald, if I recall correctly, then these workloads, you can also install them now with the .NET 6 CLI. Am I right?
Absolutely, yeah. So if I bring up a little console here, then what we can also do is .NET workload, I don't know, .NET workload. Let's see what that brings us. And you can install or work with workloads that extends the .NET experience. And right now, for instance, why is this very useful in a CLI? For instance, if you're building this in like a continuous integration pipeline.
Yeah, CI/CD
right
pipeline,
now, yeah, exactly. Right now, the bits on the hosted agents, the hosted build agents, they're not there. But you can just make sure with some command line that you pull this down. I mean, .NET is on there, so you can just do .NET workload, whatever, and it will pull down the workloads that you want that you can then start building. So this is really powerful.
Exactly. You don't need Visual Studio then to be installed on your build machine or your build server. Yeah, pretty cool. Nice.
So that's the other way to do it. So I was here. So that's whenever you install Visual Studio 2022, you will get the .NET MAUI templates, but there will also be the Xamarin Forms ones. So if I start typing Xamarin, you can see all kinds of things because there's a lot related to that. But you also have the Xamarin Forms one. So if I click next here, it will ask me for the app name. App 1 is the one that's going to make me rich. I can feel it. And then you can choose between different layouts that will basically set up some kind of template to get you started with how you want to do your layout. So flyout, tabbed, blank, and you plan to develop for Android, iOS, UWP. That's kind of the 3 supported platforms, but kind of unofficially there are more platforms supported as well that you can add, but these are the 3 that are backed by Microsoft. So if I click create, it's going to create that template for me, and we will get a Xamarin Forms template as we can build them today, and we have been able to build them for years now. Why am I showing you this? Because it's kind of related to .NET MAUI, but not entirely, if that makes sense. So here you can see that this gives you, I'll zoom in a little bit, this gives you 3 projects. This one is the shared one. That's basically where you want to have all of your code. That's where you want to have your XAML. And the more code you can put in this shared library, which is a DLL, the more code that will be shared. That is the code that's going to be shared. You can write platform-specific code if that's what you want in the iOS and the Android and iOS projects, and that will have like the Android and iOS specific things. So if we go in here a little bit, it's a big bit big, but we can manage. You can see, for instance, the info.plist, which is a list of properties that is attached to your app, very specific to the iOS ecosystem. That's the metadata that is needed for whenever you're going to deploy to the App Store and whatnot. The app delegate is also classes for iOS. And if we do the same for Android, then you can see this kind of has a main activity, which is something very Android specific, and also I think there should be, here under the properties, we have this Android manifest, which is the counterpart of the info plist with all the metadata about your Android app. And that's kind of like these Android and iOS projects are kind of like the bootstrapper projects to bootstrap your app for each platform. Now, like I said, why am I telling you this? Because this is all going away. This is going to become one project, which is really cool. But to finish kind of like this story, we have this main page.xaml right here and some other examples. So when you open that, you can see if you've worked with WPF or UWP, this should look very familiar. You can just define all of this, and whenever you run this, it will start translating these things. And depending on if you run on Android or iOS, it will look a little bit different because it will translate it to the native counterpart for you. So that's how you can work with it today. Now, if we switch over to MAUI App 6, which is very descriptive, then we see a new MAUI template, and you can see here that this only has one project. Now, again, and to be honest, I don't know to what extent this is a concept outside of the Xamarin ecosystem, but you have a concept that is called multi-targeting, where you can basically have one library. And depending on which target you want to build to, it will select different pieces from that library to actually build. So you will have this one library, all your code is in one place, but it can have multiple targets, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
right.
So that made it really easy to write libraries for Xamarin, because you could write that library once, and depending on a little naming scheme, you could call something class name .ios.cs, and that would only be compiled for iOS, or you can name it class.android.cs, and then it would only be compiled for Android. So that would make the life very much easier for library maintainers writing libraries for Xamarin apps. So you don't need to manually create all kinds of projects for the different Android target or the iOS target or whatnot. And we also took this concept for like our new apps. So now you just have this single project app which holds all the code for iOS, Android, UWP, Mac Catalyst, if that's what you want. So it's all going to be in here, and it's just going to be this single project. So if we think back to the project structure that we just saw, we now have this single project right here, but everything platform specific has moved to this platform folder. So we can't get around these platform specifics, right? We have this info.plist, we have this Android metadata, because at the end of the day, we still need to deliver Apple with a binary that they can understand, right? That they can run on their platform. And for Android, it's the same thing. Google and Apple aren't suddenly going to say like, oh, your .NET apps, yeah, let's just get that in and release that. It's going to have to be the other way around. We have to be compatible with what they want to have. So you're going to need this platform specific stuff in here. But other than that, again, you want to basically keep everything outside of these platform folders and write everything in the other bits right here. So that's kind of like the new project structure.
And it's a lot tidier than the former one. So I really like this.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of funny that you say so, because to be honest, I don't like everything about it. And there's multiple ways to go around this, right? So we can still, whenever you want to create something specific to iOS, you can just create a class in here now in the iOS folder. And it will only be compiled for iOS. Same for all the other platforms in here. But if you then want to do something, so you could still reference something in like your shared code, right? And whenever you want to do that, now you suddenly have to do if iOS, and you can also do iOS 10 or 10.3 or 11 or all the things are in here. And I don't really like these compiler directives, or how you want to call them. So that's the thing I don't really like about it. You can also get around this by using partial classes that are then partial in your shared code, and another part is in your platform's iOS folder. So there's multiple ways to solve this, but it's going to be interesting what the preference of our users is going to be. So yeah. Now, for the other thing, so the Xamarin Forms apps were kind of like, a world on its own. Like I said earlier, it was a company before us. That was acquired, but it used C# and .NET, but that was kind of it. And now, because everything is going to be, one .NET, we're going to be everything .NET 6, everything is going to be incorporated there. It shouldn't matter if you are building a mobile app or a web app or a microservice or whatnot. You should just be able to add another target and your code should just run. That's going to be kind of like the idea behind the one .NET stuff. So what we're also kind of doing is adopting practices from other areas, mostly ASP.NET in this case. So with the generic host builder. So if you see this code, this is by kind of like the entry point for your MAUI application. And this should look pretty familiar if you have worked with ASP.NET before, because you have that builder and you can use MAUI app, or you can do configure fonts. Of course, these things are specific to the thing that you're building, but this pattern with this builder should look pretty familiar. And these are specific to building apps, but we also have the things to register something in your dependency injection container, and that's something that works out of the box as well. So if I start registering my dependencies here, and somewhere else I just say, hey, I want my some service here, it will automatically know that it has to resolve that from my container. It will automatically inject that, just like you're used to from ASP.NET. So that's all stuff that we're thinking about to make it easier to transition from maybe the web developer to, well, not to transition, because that's the thing, right? It's one.NET. It's becoming one.NET again. So it shouldn't matter if you are a web developer or a .NET MAUI developer. It should all feel and come naturally to you.
So it's basically consolidating, doing something the same way, because it was quite different for Xamarin developers than for ASP.NET. But now you could cross over now. If you're not familiar with building mobile applications, for instance, you will recognize this. And then from there, you can learn building mobile applications.
Absolutely.
And what I was wondering, because formerly, I think it was .NET Mono underneath it, right? And that's also gone now. So we're all just running on the same runtime, or is that still in there somewhere?
Yes and no, but we're taking away the hard kind of bits there. So it will still run on Mono, which will be, I think the whole Mono thing is being incorporated in the .NET runtime as well. And we are switching that for you. So you don't need to worry about it. We take care of that for you. But under the hood, this still runs on Mono. So, but what I want to make clear is, yes, it should make a difference if you come from like ASP.NET and go to .NET MAUI. But make no mistake, it will come in very handy if you have mobile knowledge, because like I just said, the info plist, like the whole mobile ecosystem is very different from like a web application, right? Because you have to ask permissions for everything, which is a good thing, don't get me wrong. But for iOS, you have to get permissions to access the image gallery, to access the camera, to access the user's location, to do anything. And again, that's a good thing for our user, but that is very different from like how you do things on the web. Although, thinking about it, you have to maybe do these things and account for these scenarios, because also the browsers will also ask permissions for these things. But still, that is a very different thing. And also with like your image resources, for instance, you have to provide the images in like all kinds of resolutions, in all kinds of shapes and forms, to actually make it show up nicely. Now, also with .NET MAUI, we're trying to make that easier because we have that single project approach. So you should be able to provide an SVG, and under the hood, we are converting that to all the resolutions that you should be using. And also the same thing with the fonts. That's also something that was very much tied to the platform, that you had to basically add the font to and your iOS and your Android project, and then initialize them in a different way. So we're trying to, abstract all of those things away as much as possible. But again, at the end of the day, you're going to have to submit a build to the App Store, which is an experience of its own. I'm not going to lie. But they're definitely code-wise, we can make it very easy for you. But there will definitely be a point where you come in contact with mobile development concepts. So you're going to have to learn something, but if we can take away that first kind of threshold to get you over that, to at least that you don't have to get used to not having a generic host builder and that kind of thing. We're taking that away for you, and then you can push a little bit back, a little bit further, the pain of having to deal with the mobile development concept.
I actually had a Windows Phone app in the Microsoft Store way back, so this definitely brings back memories. But
Good memories.
Yes, of course.
Oh, okay, good. So if we run this, you can see, so that's kind of like the interesting thing now, right? With the single project approach, how are we going to specify what we want to run? Well, if we look at this little button right here, that should look pretty familiar. We can open that, and you can see all kinds of options here now. We can select the framework. So we can now run on iOS, Android. Mac Catalyst is now also officially supported. So that's basically your Mac OS target. And that kind of comes for free, air quotes, because that is kind of like the code name that Apple uses to make your iOS apps run on Mac OS kind of for free. So what they're doing, and they've implemented it really good, if I may say so, is that the exact same app that you have on iOS will run on Mac Catalyst now, so on Mac OS now. And they have a really good way of expanding the UI in a way that works for Mac OS as well. So if you're used to working with iOS, you might know, for instance, the stock mail app. It's just a list of the emails that you see, and whenever you click that, it will drill down into the actual email, right? And they have a very good concept of knowing like, okay, you have this list view. We're just then going to put that on the left side, and on the right side, we're going to have that detail view. And whenever you select something from the list, it's going to show up in that detail view. That's something that comes out of the box. So that's why I'm saying like you get it kind of for free. Because that's also what we're leveraging with this basically. So with that, we can also support macOS applications. And of course, UWP, which was before implemented with UWP, and now it's running on WinUI 3.
WinUI,
so, yeah.
Cool.
So here you select basically what target you want to run, and then you have a couple of options like, do I want to run this on the Windows machine, which only works for UWP, of course, or you can select Android emulators. The iOS ones aren't, I think it's kind of, again, it's all preview bits on preview bits, so I don't think this is working at the moment. I feel for iOS development, it's better to use Visual Studio for Mac anyway. And we got the first preview out for that as well, Visual Studio 2022 for Mac. But you can do it remotely through Windows as well. In fact, this is a little known fact. You can also do something called hot restart, where you can plug in your physical iOS device in your Windows machine. You have to have a paid Apple account and iTunes installed. But if you have that, you don't need a Mac to actually build your Mac application.
Nice.
So
cool.
You can even do that. But so there's lots of options going on here.
Okay, can you also publish it to the store without a Mac, or do you still need a Mac for that?
We can fill a complete episode with this, but short answer is no, you cannot. Not with that exact build. You will always have to make a final build on actual Mac hardware.
Okay.
But you can get around that by using Azure DevOps, which has hosted macOS build agents in the cloud that you can use for free. So, you can develop the whole thing here locally on your physical iOS device, run the final build in your CI pipeline, and you can publish that to the App Store without ever owning a Mac yourself. So
cool. Yeah.
Pro tip right here. Let me select Android right now. So Windows on Visual Studio on Windows with Android. I feel that's kind of like the best experience right now, unless it doesn't work, which it obviously doesn't. So let me try it again, see if I can make it work. I also got it pre-installed, so that's good. Let me see, MAUI app. Ooh, which one's going to be? Doesn't really matter, I think. So I got it installed here. Whenever it should run, you should get something like this. This is the template that comes out of the box, which is very simple. So if we put this side by side, here's the main page. You can see that this translates into this. So we got this scroll view, which makes sure that whenever you don't have any screen left, you can scroll this page if needed. We got this grid to make this kind of rows right here. Then we got a label, so we can see those here. And what is very nice is that we have a very big focus now also on accessibility. So here you can see the semantic properties .heading level. To be very honest, I still need to dig into what all the accessibility stuff really does. But we are getting support for that now, better support for that out of the box. I think this has to do with like screen readers that will actually, now know like, hey, this is a heading and I should read this or I should skip this. And here you can say kind of like a description. So you can make this a different description than the thing that's actually in here. Because, here you have .NET MAUI spelled as a dot and then NET, which might confuse the screen readers because they might actually read it out loud as .NET. So you can have this description, which you can see right here, where we spelled out .NET and then multi-platform and U and I with a space in between it, so that it gets read out loud a little bit nicer for the people who need that, right? So
yeah, the text will probably be "Welcome to NET multi-platform app UI."
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Absolutely, yeah. So to make that experience better, if we can make that easier, then we can hopefully convince developers to take into account accessibility more as well, and that would be awesome, of course. So this is kind of the out of the box template, which is very simple, of course. Shows a button, and if you click it, then a counter goes up. So this kind of, should get you started. But again, if you've worked with UWP or WPF, this should look pretty familiar. There's, a couple of properties that are a little bit different, but, it should be easy to get started. And also the concept with the code behind it, this is just the C# code that you're used to. A counter, count plus plus, assign it to a label, and here again something with the accessibility, so that it reads out loud that it actually did something, I can imagine. So this is all C# code that we all know and love.
Yeah. Does this also support hot reloadings? If you change something in the layout, is it automatically updated, or do you need to redeploy?
Absolutely. No, in fact, the XAML hot reload originated in Xamarin. So we kind of have two things now. We have the XAML hot reload, where you can change something in your XAML, and that will automatically show up here in the UI. But now they've taken it a step further. They're now also implementing .NET hot reload, I think is what they call it, which is the little icon right here. It even says hot reload. And with that, you can even change while you're running. You can change, well, maybe not this code, because this is really initialization code that's not being triggered anymore, but you can change this code in this on counter clicked, and I can make this +10. Then I have to click this little button to reload the actual changes without having to go to the deploy. You could see, well, you could not see because it didn't do it, but it takes a little while, especially for the mobile devices and the mobile emulators to deploy. So you can just change code while it's running. And, there are some cases where it doesn't work, but for a surprising lot of cases, it does work. And that is a real productivity boost. And that's not specific to .NET MAUI or Xamarin Forms. That's going to work for, I think, almost everything in .NET 6. So that's going to be a real productivity boost.
Cool.
Yeah, that also works for Blazor in .NET 6.
Yeah,
it's really great feature.
And that is so great that you bring it up. So another interesting thing, and I hope I can run it with this one. Let me just try right off the bat so we know if it works or not. Because we also saw whenever we started a new application that this doesn't work. Okay, so too much preview going on here. But we also have a Blazor template. So what is another kind of idea is that we can leverage Blazor from .NET MAUI. So that's what's really cool. And if we inspect this template here again, this is a file new .NET MAUI Blazor application. You can see that we still have the single MAUI project right here. We have the platform, so we can still do all the platform specific stuff here. But we also get a www root. We can also get Razor files. So what's up with that? Well, I will tell you. Good question. So we have still this MAUI program, which is the bootstrapper for your application. But now you can suddenly see we have this register Blazor MAUI web view. So that is a specific control for hosting Blazor applications in your .NET MAUI app. So you have to add this little thing here. Again, with the generic host builder, should be pretty familiar. And here you can see the thing that I mentioned earlier. Here we can just register these dependencies in our dependency container. So the Blazor web view and a singleton of our weather forecast service, because I think what they basically did is take the .NET MAUI template, take the new Blazor template, smash those together, and you end up with this template, because this is going to be the weather forecast service thing that you've seen if you've started a new Blazor application before. And if we now go to this main page.xaml, you can see the only thing that's in here is this Blazor web view, which is basically just another .NET MAUI control, but very specific to hosting a Blazor application. So you can see you have to specify like the index.html, so the starting point of our Blazor application, and then we're going to have to select our root component, right? Because that's just the way Blazor works. We need to point it to a couple of things to bootstrap that. But from there, it's only a Blazor application. So we can here go to the www root. You can see we have some CSS, and we even have Bootstrap and Open Iconic, so the icon font in here. And if we go to the index.html, you can see it has actual HTML in it. And also the app kind of thing. Again, you need to be familiar with a little bit of Blazor here. But then this is exactly what you're going to see. And we have kind of like this, is it the main Blazor? I think so. You have the router here, which accounts for like how you're going to find the pages and the route data and that kind of stuff.
And if you run this on Windows, do I get a PWA, or what is the actual output of this? Is that a native executable, or is it just a PWA that runs the Blazor app?
Interesting question. I'm first going to try and show, I think this is the one. Yes, there we go. So this is the one running cool. on Android. So here you can see it's also automatically responsive because, that's the way Blazor, or well, actually, I can credit Blazor for this, but this is actually how HTML and Bootstrap and that kind of stuff works. So it's automatically shows up nicely for this Android form factor. Here we have the menu. We can go into counter, which works. I think also the hot reload, if you are running this through a debugger, the hot reloads works through these Blazor things as well. So that works. And we have here the fetch data. So this is kind of like the weather forecast, actually. While I'm talking about this, let's check the fetch data. So this is the one here. So here you can see this injects like the weather forecast service that we registered in our MAUI program, right? So this works again. So if you know Blazor, you can do this. If you maybe have an existing Blazor application, you can just copy and paste the whole thing in here, and it should work almost out of the box.
Nice.
As to your question, does it work as a PWA? I think I've seen a template where you could, maybe if you create a new one, I don't know. I've seen it, so I'm not sure if it's going to end up in a release, but it's something that is investigated.
Okay.
If you create it, then you had this check mark to say like create it as a PWA, yes or no. And kind of like the only thing it does is that it adds, I think, a couple of metadata files to make it as a PWA, and you can deploy it that way. So I think even if it doesn't end up like as an option in the templates, I think it should not be hard to do it. But I'm not sure if it's something that we're going to officially support. But I know I've seen it at some point, so you should be able to make it work.
Cool.
Yeah, and that is kind of like all I had for you. So to finish it all off, we have some docs already. Like I said, this is full on in development. So, the things are definitely going to change. Also, the docs are still shaping up. Kind of the cool thing is that, so one question that comes up a lot, maybe let me explain it that way, is like, should I wait for .NET MAUI if I want to get started with this? No, never wait. Get started with Xamarin Forms, because I maybe didn't emphasize it enough, but all the XAML that you saw in Xamarin Forms and the C# code, I mean, that's I'm not even going to mention that, is going to be exactly the same between Xamarin Forms and .NET MAUI. There's going to be a couple of properties that are renamed, so you'll see those automatically. But everything you learn about Xamarin Forms, especially again the mobile concepts and that kind of stuff, that is going to be applicable on .NET MAUI as well. So if you want to get started with this, just get started today with Xamarin Forms. Also, that is a lot more stable than, as you can see, the .NET MAUI right now. So the tooling is much better. So you will have a better experience getting started. And everything that you know about Xamarin Forms will be applicable to .NET MAUI as well. So here we have some docs. What is it? Supported platforms. Already something about customizing controls, because, like I mentioned, the outside APIs are all kind of like the same. So that's not going to change for the developers, which is great. But under the hood, the whole architecture has changed for the better, I would say. So there's that. And of course, the repository, github.com/.NET/MAUI. So, if you want to check out really what's going on in the code, or maybe at the time of recording, it's Hacktoberfest. So maybe you want to get in your contributions for that t-shirt, then this might be your chance to do it. So here is where it's all happening. Go check that out. And this is also where you can get kind of like the latest and greatest. So yeah.
Pretty awesome. Thanks for that overview. I really like what I'm seeing here. Like I said, the last time I did mobile development, it was for Windows Phone. Still a fan, by the way. So yeah. So it brings back a lot of memories.
Yeah, I don't think Windows Phone is coming back anytime soon, Edwin.
No, but I still have the source code for the file, just for the app, just living on my hard drive, just in
case.
just, yeah, for all time's sake. So yeah, pretty cool. And like you said, you know, it's kind of also a question of taste. If you like the one project file, or if you were more in love with the form of structure that you have with Xamarin Forms. But there's a lot of possibilities. And I actually like that I recognize, like you said, I recognize the way the application is set up, and you set up your dependency injection. So I think that takes away a lot of, well, thresholds for people to start learning this stuff. So
absolutely,
cool.
and that's kind of what we're trying to do with this, like, you know, to make at least like the first context experience a lot better, so that it will be much easier to transition from one area to another. But I think, you know, kind of like what I've mentioned before, I think that's true for kind of like all types of applications, right? At some point, you're going to have some specific knowledge on how to deploy that web application and make it work with, like, you know, oh my gosh, the bootstrap files are not loading, my CSS is not loading, what's going on? That's something that you're not going to have with mobile applications. There you're going to have a whole different world of pain. So each kind of like platform or target is going to have its specifics at some point, right? We're never going to get completely around that, but if you can make at least the kind of like writing code experience easier, to not have to also have the cognitive load to learn all kinds of new concepts because you now want to make a mobile app, that is what we're trying to take away, and then hopefully that will be a better experience for everyone.
Yeah, cool. So thanks again for showing us. I really liked it, and I will be starting out with some pet projects in Maui. I'm pretty sure about that. Everybody watching, I hope you also like this episode. If you like .NETFlix, please subscribe to our channel, and then we will welcome you to the next episode. Bye-bye.